This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome to this special edition of NC Spin. Our state lost a great citizen recently when John Medlin passed away. John was the former CEO of Wachovia Bank, but he was also a friend to many of us and to organizations throughout our state. We were fortunate enough to conduct the last interview John granted as part of our Carolina Collection series. Filmed in front of a live audience at Old Salem, we want to present excerpts from that interview on this week's show. John Medlin, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here and do this interview with you.
It's an honor for me, Tom. Thank you.
It was 1891 when the legislature chartered a new kind of financial institution called a trust company. Help us understand how that's different from a traditional bank.
Well, Colonel Francis Freeze was having difficulty settling his father's estate, apparently, and there was nobody around that could handle fiduciary powers, executor and so forth. And so he saw a need that was not being met, and I think helped get the legislature to charter trust companies. And he had the first charter in North Carolina of a trust company, and it was called Wachovia Loan and Trust Company. Colonel Freeze must have been quite a character. He opened this bank in 1893, and in short order, it became the largest bank in the South. After they merged with Wachovia National in 1911, it was the biggest bank in the South, the largest trust company between Baltimore and New Orleans. What was it about him? He was an entrepreneur of a broad sense, and his first step after in 1903, he opened branches in Asheville, Salisbury, and High Point fairly at short order. And so he really was a beginner of statewide banking in North Carolina. Colonel Freeze died in 1931 in office, not in the office, but while he was president. And taking his place was Robert M. Haynes, whose son is here tonight, Frank Borden Haynes, and grandson Borden Haynes. And Colonel Freeze had laid a very solid foundation, but Mr. Haynes really built the structure on top of it and fleshed it out. But through main strength and determination, the bank survived the bank holiday. It was Wachovia Bank who loaned the state of North Carolina money to pay its employees during this time, was it not? That's true. I think Mr. Haynes stepped up. We were one of the ones who had the financial means to do so, stepped up and helped the state when it didn't have the tax revenues to meet the payroll. He did some things after the war that recognized the consumer banking needs of the time and opening new branches and having drive-in windows and financing car loans and all those kinds of things, homes that help the recovery after the war. There wouldn't be a Research Triangle Park were it not for Archie Davis and Wachovia Bank financing that project. Well, that's true. Mr. Haynes initially was asked by Governor Hodges after he retired in 1956 to help with that Research Triangle Park project. And Archie got into it after Mr. Haynes got very sick and a few months before he passed away. And so Archie went out in the fall of 1958 and raised $1,800,000 to across the state. A lot of people say, what in the world is this park here? But because Archie said it was a great idea, they would give to it. Wachovia Bank was the largest contributor to that enterprise and about financed the first land purchase. Yeah, and financed the land purchase, and it was a loan that got criticized by the bank examiners because it was undeveloped land and it wasn't even producing any income. In 1959, as you say, you got out of the Navy. I think, if I remember correctly, your first child was about to be born, and you needed a job. And how did you get up with Wachovia? Well, I was on a cruise to the Mediterranean and got extended to go into the Persian Gulf. There was some trouble over there at that time, and that's when Iraq actually was taken over by Saddam Hussein, and we got extended for 3 months, and so I didn't get back till after the child was born. Polly had the first child by herself in Norfolk, Virginia. And never let you forget it. And well, she's been very understanding and tolerant through the years, including that. But I couldn't help that. But I came to Wachovia, had some interviews lined up, and her father, who was in investment banking in New York, said, "Don't come to New York, go south, because that's where the growth in the future is." And he knew Wachovia and said, "You might talk to them," and so I did. And came here from Norfolk after having gotten home just a few days earlier, and I liked the people. A wonderful lady named Ruth Butler mustered me in and took me around to see people that day, in which I saw Archie Davis and a number of people, and Claude Higginbotham and a number of others that say these are my kind of people. And so I said at the end of the day, I'll take a job. And he said, "Well, don't you want to look some other places?" I said, "No, I don't." And that was it.
We'll return to our interview with John Medlin in just a moment. This special edition of NC Spin is part of an hour-long Carolina Collection interview series we conducted with John a few weeks ago. If you'd like your own DVD copy of the entire interview, you can obtain one by calling NC Spin at 832-1416 or by visiting our website, ncspin.com. Click on the Spin store under the Carolina Collection series. DVD copies are $19.95. So order yours today by calling 832-1416 or visit our website, ncspin.com.
Baseball players from other countries are considered guest workers here. Baseball, the previous administration and Congress cut a deal in 2006 allowing foreign players to travel freely across the country. Not so for agriculture guest workers. They're vilified for doing work Americans won't, and they face a mountain of red tape just to get here. Shouldn't American agriculture get the same consideration as baseball? Farm Bureau and Agriculture, we keep North Carolina growing.
I cook to save money on my electric bills. He does it because, well, I guess because I do it. Your Touchstone Energy Cooperative can teach you how to save energy and money at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
I'm glad exams are over.
College is tough, but finding a job is tougher. The legislature is being attacked for cutting red tape and lowering taxes on businesses to create jobs. When businesses pay less taxes, they have more money to invest in expanding and creating jobs.
That's Econ 101. It's common sense.
The issue is jobs, and if tax cuts on businesses help create jobs, it helps everybody.
We now return to our special Carolina Collection interview with John Medlin.
What was the biggest technological or change in banking during your tenure?
Well, and the first big technological advance that I saw was the IBM 3850 check sorter, which did it, 2,000 a minute or something like that, which when you put the little account numbers on there in magnetic ink, it would read them and put them in proper pigeonholes. And so that was one of the early innovations. But in the early 70s, we realized that technology was coming fast, and that we needed to. When I was head of the Winston-Salem office between 65 and 70, if somebody came in and wanted to know what their balance was, you had to take your lunch and go look in several places to find out, because you had accounts credited to each branch. And so we got it all together, and Jim Brewer, our retail banking head, came up with what's called the Personal Banker Program, where we had all the information about an individual's relationship with the bank on one, would come up on the screen when you put the name in, account number. And that was the best marketing program we ever had, because everybody had a personal banker, and the telephone number was on the...
Yeah, his name was on my bank statement.
And fortunately, they didn't all call up the same day. But it was a great innovation, I think, because it married the personal touch and the high-tech part of our business. And
well, this was so wildly popular that banks all across the United States wanted to come down here and learn what you were doing with personal banking.
Yeah, they'd call up and say, "Hi, we want to come down and see your personal banker program." And we said, "Well, you can't see it very well. It take a long time to develop it." And we actually trademarked it, and some people tried to copy it.
In one of the interviews you did, I was fascinated by a comment that you made. You said you often ask yourself the question, who do I work for? And the obvious answer would be the board of directors and the shareholders of the organization, but you felt like it went deeper than that, didn't you?
Well, it did. I mean, you always had to sometimes stop when you find yourself sometimes dealing with the urgent every day rather than the important. You say, well, what's this all about? Who am I working for? And you take them off. Of course, you work for shareholders, and you work for customers, and you work for your employees, and you work for the public interest. And if you serve all those constituents well, you will do well. And so I think that was something that we emphasized always when we got troops together and talked about what we're all about.
Is that missing today? Have we moved into an era when not just financial organizations, but corporations in general seem to believe that the only people they're really working for are the shareholders?
Well, I think there's some that probably think that way. It's all about profits, all about what we're going to do. It's not just next year, but next quarter. And obsession with performance, and that's important. And one of the things I'm proud of about our company is that during the 17 years I was chief executive officer, our earnings grew at a rate of 12% compound, and our stock grew at a compound annual rate, including dividends, of 17%.
Remarkable.
And so I think we took good care of our shareholders, but we also put a lot of money back into our communities, community by community, and the state as a whole.
And you said your priorities were always soundness, profitability, and growth.
That was our mantra. That, you first all have to, as a bank, you have to, as someone said, hope for the best, expect the worst, and be prepared for anything. So you had to be sound. And then you had to make some money because you wanted to be able to pay your people, and you wanted to be able to do a good job for shareholders. And thirdly, you wanted to grow. And you can do those things all together without necessarily making one of them stand out that much above the other.
We'll have more of our interview with John Medlin after this.
This is Robert. Hey, yeah, still going. Well, I talked to them and they gave me some options. Yeah, it does. I think it's going to work.
Seize this opportunity to elect a Republican insurance commissioner, Mike Causey. Visit gocausey.com.
Paid for by Mike Causey for Insurance Commissioner.
We now return to our special Carolina Collection interview with John Medlin.
In 1985, the federal government cleared the way for regional interstate banking, and you were prepared almost immediately, announcing the merger with First Atlanta. What was the significance of this merger?
Well, we had been talking to First Atlanta and other banks over time about if that happened. The suit was in the Supreme Court, and we hoped it came out our way. And, all of us, we had did all the branching we could do in North Carolina. We thought we could bring better banking to some other states, and we could. And a day in June, we had just gotten back that weekend from an international monetary conference in the Far East, in Hong Kong, I think, and had gotten back on Sunday night. And Monday morning, I got a call saying the Supreme Court's ruled. And I also got a call not long after that from the head of the First National Bank of Atlanta that said we want to talk. And so I got on an airplane, went to Atlanta, we talked, and we did due diligence, and by the next Saturday we had reached the point where we could get down and talk serious merger, and on Sunday we did, and another bank, NCNB, was after him pretty hot and heavy, and Sunday night they finally made the decision to merge with us.
I think that looking back over history, the one that most folks would find a fairly interesting part of that history was in 2001 with First Union.
Well, I retired completely from the organization in 2001, so I was watching in the stands, so to speak, as opposed to being on the playing field. And we had had some conversations over several years with SunTrust, and they really wanted to merge with us, and it never worked out because they were a Florida, Georgia bank, because they had a different business model. They operated independent banks in each of their major cities. And anyway, it seemed to make sense at the time that First Union was a preferable merger partner. They had the business model was very similar to ours. They had more robust mutual funds and capital markets business, and a lot of good reasons, because you wouldn't have the problem with the headquarters and all that stuff. And that was the decision that was made, and I supported it. Unfortunately, in 2006, in an interest in getting on the West Coast, the management of the company at that time decided to acquire the Golden West Savings and Loan. That turned out that was a good decision if it had been at a different time. It was just bad timing, and that led to the eventual problem that everybody knows about what happened. But I would also add something, that the shotgun merger of Wachovia and Citibank that occurred over a weekend was not about saving Wachovia, it was about saving Citibank. They were trying to get...
Well, we didn't get that in the media at all.
No, you didn't, but that's true.
Wow.
And if Wachovia had gotten a $25 billion TARP loan at the same time that happened, it wouldn't have needed to merge with anybody.
How do you rate Dodd-Frank now, looking back at it?
Well, Dodd-Frank will not do anything to prevent another financial crisis. As a matter of fact, it did something that will make one more possible, more likely. They raised deposit insurance from $100,000 to $250,000, which means banks that ought not to be able to get $250,000 of deposits from somebody will be able to do it now under the guise that it's protected by the federal government, when in fact that's not true. I think the chances of another crisis are probably heightened by the fact that deposit insurance was raised, so that banks that are not well run, banks that are not honest, banks that are taking too much risk are going to be able to get the money to do it with again.
We'll have more of our interview with John Medlin after this.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
I'm glad exams are over.
College is tough, but finding a job is tougher. The legislature is being attacked for cutting red tape and lowering taxes on businesses to create jobs. When businesses pay less taxes, they have more money to invest in expanding and creating jobs.
That's Econ 101. It's common sense.
The issue is jobs, and if tax cuts on businesses help create jobs, it helps everybody.
Seize this opportunity to elect a Republican insurance commissioner, Mike Causey. Visit gocausey.com.
Paid for by Mike Causey for Insurance Commissioner.
We now return to NC Spin.
What was Wachovia's legacy, in your opinion?
The spirit of Wachovia is going to live on. It's going to live on in people like Stan Kelly and Leslie Hayes, who's got a big region, Jack Clayton, John Elliott. A lot of others are still around that you can name that are true blue Wachovians who've been around for 25, 30 years, and they're going to still be doing business the same way.
Tell us, what do you see as the present-day picture of North Carolina?
Well, North Carolina has a jobs problem, a serious jobs problem. We have 450,000 or so people unemployed. We have 80,000 fewer people working today than were working when this recession began. We haven't gotten back to the high water mark in employment yet. In the last 20 years, we have lost, since the Berlin Wall came down and jobs started fleeing the country to lower wage places, we have lost 440 manufacturing jobs. And it's manufacturing is
440,000.
440,000 manufacturing jobs, which is only 12% of total employment now, and it used to be 25, 30%. Of those manufacturing jobs that we've lost, 410 of them are from textiles, apparel, furniture, and tobacco. Those four industries accounted for about 500,000 jobs at one time back in the 70s. They now account for 70,000 jobs total. Wow. And the jobs that have been lost in those industries are not coming back. And that is the reason our unemployment rate is 9.7% compared to 8.2% for the nation, 1.5 points higher. And it's going to stay that way until we find a better way to create jobs. We also need to redo our tax structure. I've served on 3 commissions that gave the same answer, that we have to broaden the tax base, tax services, and we always got shot down by the liberals in the House. So we've got to broaden that base and be able to lower those income tax rates on corporations and individuals and repeal the estate tax in order to keep those people here who live 6 months and 1 day in Florida and still enjoy North Carolina in the mountains in the summertime.
Do you see the leaders in North Carolina with the kind of vision and the ability to be able to help chart a direction for us to take us to the future?
I wish I could say I do. I think there's some people who have that potential, but we don't have it, clearly in place yet. A lot of people know what needs to be done, and we tend to get caught up in all these social issues and things that aren't going to create a single job. We're putting our energies in places that are not going to pay off, and if we don't do something, the state's going to fall farther and farther behind.
How important is education in this whole process?
Well, I should have mentioned that. I mean, we have to find a modern day way of doing education. There's a school down in Mooresville that people are flocking in from all over the country to see what they're doing, but they actually cut the number of teachers, raise the class size, cut their budget, and they're doing it through computer-based education.
What's your take on Simpson Bowles?
Well, it's the best thing I've seen, Tom, to deal with this problem. We have 4 D's in the problem. We have our deficits. We have our debt. We're over-indebted, over-leveraged. We have demographics that are turning negative because over the next 15 years, the number of people over 65 will double, while the number of working-age population stays about the same. And we have to do something. And I don't think there's any question that higher-income people may need to pay higher taxes. There are ways to do that. But the other side of the equation is we've got to stop spending. I think you can do a revenue-neutral tax reform at state and federal levels and get by with the same amount of money that would collect. And you maybe interject more element of fairness.
And that's what Erskine and Alan
Right. That's essentially what they suggest, as I understand it.
What's it going to take to get the climate of this country back to a point where we can sit down and talk about and resolve these issues?
Well, again, the election this fall may give us some hope on that score. But if we don't deal with it, if the election doesn't work out very well, we've still got this partisanship, gridlock. I tell you who will take care of it is the bond market. We're going to wake up one day. The Federal Reserve really can't dictate interest rates, but for a very short term.
Right.
And if we keep spending an extra, $1 trillion, 4 or 5 more than we take in every year, somewhere along the way, somebody's going to say, hey, wait a minute, no more. And interest rates will pop up one day.
Erskine says that could get to be real scary real quick.
It can get to be real messy. One other question that you didn't ask me, but I would like to answer, is what is the thing that I'm the proudest of?
Yeah, I meant to ask you, what's the Medlin legacy? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not sure what the Medlin legacy is, but the thing I'm proudest of is the relationship and the support and the respect I was able to enjoy, not so much with the people at the top, but the people all down through the organization at Wachovia, because they're the ones that I think deserve the most credit for whatever awards might have come in my name. And some of them are here tonight that are responsible for that. My executive assistant for years, Shirley House, Marilyn Revis, and
I never have been able to get her to tell me the truth about
Jane Mitchell, and lots of others that you could name thousands of them across this company that I'm just proud to have been associated with.
John, I have just so enjoyed this. I hope this has not been too tough on you, but I just got to tell you, you've been one of my heroes for many, many years, and I hope our audience has enjoyed hearing more about one of North Carolina's storied financial institutions as shared by perhaps one of its best spokespersons and leaders, John Medlin. And we hope also that those of you who are viewing this will let our underwriters, Wells Fargo, Touchstone Energy, and Blue Cross, know that they appreciate programming like this. John Medlin, thank you very much.
Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this special Carolina Collection interview of John Medlin, completed just a few weeks before he died. Remember, you can get a DVD copy of the entire interview by visiting our website, ncspin.com. And we hope you'll join us next week when we return to our normal format. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.